Welcome back to the Retro Vault, where we'll be looking at and diving into stories from games of old. In this installment, we'll be travelling back to the PS2 era and looking at the story behind Darkworks' 2005 horror game, Cold Fear. Now, I recently played Still Wakes the Deep, a horror game set on an oil rig, and it reminded me of this game. I played this title way back in the day and remember it terrifying me. I remember being in some storeroom on a ship, the lights going out, and hearing the terrifying sound of someone opening a door. Then the inevitable happened. The console went off, the lights went on, and I went down and told my mummy I was scared. Anyway, 17-year-old me never actually completed the game until now. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the game and its origins, we're just going to jump straight in, but please be aware before we do that even though this is an old game, there will be spoilers in this video for Cold Fear. A US Navy SEAL team are being deployed onto a Russian whaling ship, the Eastern Spirit. Upon searching the seemingly abandoned ship, the SEAL team are attacked and torn apart by something. The entire team are wiped out. The team's handler, CIA agent Jason Bennett, sends out a call for anyone in the area to investigate the ship. The call is received by the US Coast Guard ship, the Ravenswood, who send a crew to the ship. With the team is former Special Forces soldier and now US Coast Guard Tom Hansen. Battling the stormy seas and the vicious waves, being careful not to be thrown overboard and into the sea, Tom manages to find a way inside the ship. He is attacked by two Russians who seem to be absolutely terrified. After putting them down, Tom hears a woman shouting from inside a code-locked door. The mutilated bodies of the crew lay everywhere, and after battling through more Russians trying to kill him, Tom eventually comes across his colleague, Lieutenant Lansing, who has been brutally killed. Tom grabs the code for the emergency radio off of Lansing's body and is then attacked by what used to be a member of the ship's crew. Killing it, Tom enters the fish hold and sees an orca in there. It's been cut open. In front of it is the key for the radio room. The orca seemingly reanimates, and a few small, unrecognizable creatures crawl out of the carcass. They are definitely hostile, whatever they are. Tom escapes the fish hold, fights his way to the radio room, and contacts Agent Bennett. He says that there's a dangerous man on board, a Colonel Dmitry Yusupov. Tom needs to secure the colonel, and then Bennett promises that he'll get Tom out of there. Somehow, Bennett knows that Yusupov is located in the rear deck house, so Tom heads out onto the deck and fighting through yet more reanimated corpses, he makes it to the rear deck house and sure enough, Yusupov is in there, and he's not in great shape. He explains that what happened on the ship is the result of a terrible mistake, and that he needs to find someone called Anna, as she'll have answers. She's the woman that's been locked in the room by the ship's captain, Lubensky. He hands an experimental weapon to Tom, which contains bolts that release an enzymatic gas, and the gas will attract any infected monsters. One of the small creatures bursts out of the colonel's chest and tries to attack Tom, but he kills it. Contacting Bennett, he says that Tom needs to find Lubensky. Tom enters another section of the ship and he witnesses exactly how the dead men are reanimating. The small creatures are infecting dead bodies, and that is what is reanimating them. Moving through the bowels of the ship, Tom sees a clump of biomass, and the small creatures appear to be coming from this growth, so Tom destroys it with an explosion. He enters into a section containing strange life pods. Some have been opened, almost as if they were broken out of somehow. Going to where Anna is locked up, Tom enters the room. After explaining who he is, Anna says that she can't tell Tom anything, as she doesn't actually know anything. She does, however, say that her father does. A call from Bennett reveals that Anna is the daughter of Viktor Kamsky, a scientist who is partly responsible for what's happening there on the ship. Accompanying Anna to the radio room, she contacts an old Russian oil rig named the Star of Sakhalin. The man she is speaking with tells her to stay away and that her father is missing, that it's too dangerous on the rig, but Anna refuses to heed his words and tells the man she is on her way to the rig. She tells Tom that she needs to get the code to unlock the ship's autopilot from the captain, Lubensky. So, searching for Lubensky, Tom finds him in another of the cold rooms which hold the life pods. Grabbing the key for his captain's quarters, Tom finds the unlock code for the autopilot and gives it to Anna. She turns the ship towards the rig and tells Tom to meet her on the crow's nest. Essentially, the seas are too rough to dock the ship to the rig, so they are going to slam the ship into the rig and jump from the crow's nest. Fighting his way to Anna, protecting her, Tom and Anna make it to the crow's nest. With the rig in view, the ship collides and they jump. Tom makes it, but Anna falls into the sea, and Tom jumps after her. He washes up on the rig, but gets infected by one of the small creatures. Waking up, Tom moves into the rig and to a platform where it's more of the same. Infected dead men are trying to attack him. Tom hears the sound of gunfire in the sickbay, and he finds a scared scientist in there. Tom then collapses, and the man injects Tom with something, an antidote. The man introduces himself as Dr. Bakarev. He's the man who warned Anna to stay away from the rig. We should probably now explore what on earth has been going on here and on the ship. The Star of Sakhalin oil rig was initially owned and operated by the Russian state and was used for its general purpose, to drill for oil. However, that did not last long as the oil rig needed replacement parts and repairs, but those parts and the subsequent repairs never arrived or happened. So the Russian state sold the rig for scrap, and it ended up being purchased by the Russian mafia. Colonel Yusupov, himself a member of the Russian mafia, oversaw the recommissioning of the rig and contacted one of his comrades, a Major Yuri Anashenko, as the two served together in Afghanistan. A radio jammer, a JAX system, was designed by Sergei Oterian, a scientist for the Soviets during the Cold War, and this would ensure that any outside communications would not get through. The location of the rig helped too, given that it was located within the vastness of the ocean. It's unclear as to what exactly the mafia operation was, whether or not it was just drilling for oil, but 25 days in, the drill brought up a number of creatures they would term Exocels. A couple of days later, Exocels started to crawl up onto the rig's platforms, and Major Anashenko and his men were given orders to capture some of the specimens. Drilling operations ceased while they worked out what to do next. They recruited a scientist, a Dr. Kamsky. It's not clear as to why he was recruited and what particular skill set he possessed, but he arrived on the rig along with his daughter Anna. Kamsky was regretful of all that he'd put Anna through in her life. Due to her mother dying, she was dragged around because of her father's work. Kamsky's labs had been outfitted with all the equipment that he needed, and they recruited 20 scientists. At first, Yusupov didn't know exactly why Kamsky was convinced to work for him, but was intrigued by Kamsky's first encounter with the Exocels. He was both horrified and fascinated by them. They set an Exocel loose on a dog, and Kamsky initially saw the potential of these creatures. Learning of the amount of funding that the Russian mafia were preparing to put into the project, Kamsky grew interested. Kamsky told Yusupov about the military potential of the Exocels, but he did warn Yusupov about the lack of control they'd have over them. Months later, with Bakarev on board, who came recommended by the mafia, he was tasked with creating the antidote for the infection. He also created the experimental weapon, the spear gun, whose bolts produced the enzymatic gas that would attract any infected organism. You see, the scientists realized that the Exocels are parasites, and they survive by hunting down sources of protein. They can sense organic protein and try to devour it in any way they can. They do this by feasting on people using their tendrils, or by entering the mouths of unconscious victims, but also by entering recently deceased corpses' mouths and reanimating them into an aggressive zombie-like state. They do this via their tendrils, which reach up to the brain. The enzymatic gas fools any infected or contaminated organisms into thinking the gas is a source of protein, and it keeps them occupied. This is their way of controlling the Exocels if they were to be used militarily, but the problem is that the gas only lasts a few seconds. However, results were slow in coming, despite the fact that state-of-the-art labs had been installed on the rig, and that even more scientists had been forced to work there. The Russian mafia had what Yusupov termed an inexhaustible supply of human subjects. At first, Kamsky was unsure about force-contaminating human subjects, but he soon came round. After having deliberately infected and observed over 300 subjects, Kamsky and his scientists charted the growth of the Exocels as they tried to work out how to control them. He discovered that the length it takes for infection and mutation varies depending on the subject. He discovered that due to the Exocel's tendrils getting into the victim's brain, the brain of the infected individual needs to be destroyed. Kamsky considered that the Exocel may be an alien creature or a prehistoric creature that had been awakened. They found mammalian DNA inside some Exocels, but not in others. It was, as Kamsky puts it, maddeningly inconsistent. But Bakarev had an interesting theory, that due to the government's underwater facility and their dumping of nuclear waste in the past, this had resulted in the Exocels. Kamsky notes that Yusupov seems to know something, as he used to visit the rig when with the Russian army. Anyway, Kamsky struggled with the notion that Yusupov simply wanted him to create weapons from these Exocels. Creatures that, I'm guessing, could be sold to the highest bidder. But Kamsky saw the potential of these creatures in evolution, how they can improve human life. So Kamsky would vow to see what he could make for himself. Bakarev in the meantime had developed the antidote, but it needs to be administered quickly, as if the tendrils of the exocell reach the subject's brain, it's over and it's too late to save them, and the brain must be destroyed. Kamsky would find a way to prevent the exocell from killing its host virus serum, but they were still no closer to finding a way to control the creatures. The enzymic gas was still the best method of control. They would also discover other dangerous mutations. They discovered interesting things about the life and reproduction cycle of the exocells. These small creatures were called contaminators, and they'd eventually attach themselves high up on walls and would grow into a blob of biomass called breeders. And these breeders would produce more contaminators, which would obviously seek out proteins. In the meantime, Anashenko's men had been disappearing one by one, and this was the work of Kamsky himself, who was secretly attempting to find the next step in human evolution. He discovered DNA and had used it on himself. He wrote a letter for Anna telling her that his metamorphosis is not yet complete, that his arms are continuing to develop. He claims that he'll be immortal, and he wants Anna to join him. At some point, however, Yusupov discovered Kamsky's plans after he had Anashenko pirate Kamsky's laptop. He was furious, but also terrified of what it was that Kamsky was planning to do. So Yusupov boarded the whaling ship with Lubensky. The ship was carrying a load of specimens on board which were being shipped to the Mafia. Since Anna was Yusupov's bargaining chip to keep Kamsky in line, he took her with him onto the whaling ship. Lo and behold, Bakarev would hear from the whaling ship. He was sure he heard them say that there were exocells on board the ship. Anashenko ordered the ship back to the rig, but heard nothing back. That was until Anna radioed from the radio room on the ship and spoke with Bakarev. At this point, Viktor Kamsky had completely disappeared. After being filled in on what happened there, Tom asks Bakarev about the radio jammer. He needs to contact Bennett, but can't as the radio jammer is blocking the signal. Bakarev tells Tom that in order to get into the area to destroy the jammers, he needs help from Major Anashenko for the retinal scanner. However, the Major isn't going to do this willingly. Tom and Bakarev leave the sickbay, but Bakarev is pulled into a vent and killed. Moving on, Tom encounters one of the new mutations, a creature that uses the vents to move around and it's pretty fast. Encountering more mercenaries fighting the infected, Tom takes them all out and eventually comes into contact with Anashenko and his men. Killing the Major and all his men, Tom grabs Anashenko's eyeball and heads into a control room to unlock the door using the retinal scanner. Gaining access, Tom destroys the jamming system's generators and re-establishes contact with Bennett. He tells Tom that he'll need to find Kamsky's research notes, and they'll probably be on his laptop. Bennett says that with the data, they can make sure this never happens again. Viewing some monitors, Tom spots Anna. She was in fact pulled from the water by a strange tall creature. She was placed on a countertop, but she has been infected by an exocell. Tom needs to get to her with an antidote, and fast. Heading over to the scientific module, Tom walks over a fleshy substance and falls down into a sort of nest and gets infected again. Coming to, he sees that something is growing there. He also sees more breeders on the walls. Finding his way out, Tom manages to gain access to the upper floor and sees that the fleshy substance is starting to grow all over the rig. Taking an underwater tunnel, Tom encounters another mutation, this one an invisible exocell. Dealing with it, he enters the labs. He spots another few specimens, more mutations. Riding the elevator up, he finds that the labs contain all manner of experiments on the exocells. Inside Dr. Kamsky's lab, Tom finds the antidote that Anna needs. Fighting another and more ferocious mutation, which is heavily armoured, but has an obvious weak spot, Tom moves into the room where Anna is. He makes the tough decision, and although being infected himself, he chooses to cure Anna instead. Tom then collapses, but then he comes to having been cured by Anna, who it seems had another antidote on her. Hearing Bennett telling him to move it, Anna is gone. Tom tells Bennett to get Anna off the rig, and he'll do what he says and retrieve the notes off of Kamsky's laptop for him. Making contact with Anna, Tom thanks her for saving him and tells her that Agent Bennett will get her off the rig, but Anna says that Tom needs to help her destroy the rig itself. Heading into the science personnel dormitory, Tom finds the laptop. He uploads the antidote data to Bennett, but that's it. Much to Bennett's annoyance. Tom knows full well why Bennett wants the research data. Speaking to Anna, she says that in order to destroy the rig, Tom needs to retrieve some explosives and place them at strategic locations on the rig in order for their plan to work. Learning of the supply room's location, Tom sets out for the location. In reaching it, he has to avoid some lasers, but he retrieves the explosives. One by one, he sets the charges, and after destroying what he needed to, Tom gets to the heliport and reaches Anna. She's found a working helicopter, but Anna's father Kamsky shows up in his new mutated form. He attempts to grab Anna to stop her from planting explosives and from leaving him, but after Tom keeps the monster distracted, Anna is able to plant all the explosives, but Tom must now kill Kamsky. He's pretty much invincible, but as he grabs Tom, he's able to blast Kamsky in the face, and after a few shots to the face, Kamsky is dead. Tom and Anna then board the chopper and detonate the charges, destroying the oil rig and hopefully any trace of the Exocels infestation too. The game then ends. And that's it for the story of Cold Fear. Overall, the frustrating and clunky gameplay, which is pretty much a staple of horror games of this era, was made a little bit more entertaining thanks to an awesome atmosphere and a pretty cool storyline. This game had massive potential, but it didn't quite hit the mark. One thing that didn't make much sense to me was the creature growing underneath in the nest area. It seems to look just like the monster that Kamsky transformed into, but it can't be him, as at this point he's fully mutated. But let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this little foray back into this game and its story, then please leave a like on the video and subscribe if you aren't already. Leave your comments and your thoughts down below, but for now take care and I will see you in the next one.